welcome to Writer, where we meet the authors you love and introduce you to new authors and books for your TBR pile. I'm your host, Kat Filer, also known as KJ Filer, and my guest today is Gary Gerlacher, author of the A.J. Dr. Medical Thriller series. After 30 years in the field of medicine as a pediatric emergency physician, Gary has a lifetime of stories to share from his experiences. His books seek to capture the chaos and energy of life in the emergency room while seeking justice for traumatized patients. They feature a potent mix of emotion, action, and humor as Doc and Banshee, his canine sidekick, travel the country to meet new challenges in each work environment. Hi, Gary. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me tonight.
No, it was great to have you. Please tell listeners about your series. Who are the characters and what's it all about?
Gotcha. So the main character is AJ Docker. He goes by Doc. He's an emergency room physician, and he takes temporary contracts around the country. So each book is set in a different city. And the basic premise is that Doc, something bad happens to one of his patients. There's a murder. There's a bomb going off. There's something traumatic. A dying declaration from a patient. And that kind of sets Doc off on a path to find justice for that patient, to figure out what happened, usually leading to a much larger mystery murder.
Okay.
The other big component of that is Banshee. He's a Belgian Malinois. That is Doc's sidekick. They meet in book one, and Banshee takes a bullet for Doc and almost dies, but he doesn't, because everyone would be mad at me if the dog died.
Yeah.
They're okay if humans die, but you can't have the dog die.
Right.
But Banshee is very well trained, is very involved in the plots. He can chase people down. He can carry cameras quietly into places. So he's a big part of the story too, which people seem to enjoy.
So is Banshee fictional, or do you have a sidekick?
I have two rescue dogs who are very poorly behaved. Banshee is a highly trained killing machine. So Banshee is fictional. He's actually based on police dogs that I've seen in the emergency room, because sometimes the police would actually come in when they captured somebody. They would bring the police dog in with them, and it was always great to interact. Police dogs are the best.
Yeah. What inspired you to write the series?
I tell people there's just great stories from the emergency room. Everything crazy happens in the emergency room. You meet all sorts of interesting characters, all walks of life. I can get from homeless to a billionaire on the next patient. And just crazy things happen. And I always said it would be a great setting for, a main character, because ER doctors in general are very adrenaline junkies. They're very decisive. They're used to high stress, high pressure situations, making decisions under fire. And so it's just kind of a great basis for, how do you meet interesting people? Go to the emergency room.
Well, and it's another spin on the whole mystery series. It's a medical mystery series. So that's kind of cool.
So one of the things I do is I throw a lot of little vignettes in with patients that we see that tend to be very common patients that come through the ER. Some of them provide, kind of a social statement. Some of them are more humor. Some are just interesting. People, find it kind of interesting what actually comes in the emergency room.
Yeah. How many books is that now? There's like 4, and
so the fourth
audio
one comes out in 2 weeks. And
okay.
then the fifth one is pretty much done and going into the publisher for formatting. And the sixth one is underway.
Okay, well, so the good news is that when you start reading these books and you get hooked, there's a lot. So you're okay.
Absolutely. We'll keep you busy for a few weeks at least.
Where do you get your inspiration for characters, and how do you come up with the plots?
So the characters, they just pop into my head. Some of them are absolutely based on, people I've met or known in the past, interesting characters I've met along the way. The plots, I've been a reader much longer than I've been a writer, and I almost exclusively read thrillers. I will read any thriller anytime. The plot, there's only so many plots out there,
Mm-hmm.
and people don't realize it. It's really the characters who go through the plot that make it interesting and unique. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm a complete pantser. I make everything up as I go. I start with no plot whatsoever. I usually start with one event. A bomb went off in the garage outside the emergency room, and I have
I
no idea where the story's going to go.
Okay. Do any of the stories come from something that ever happened in the ER when you were there, or that peripherally knew
The
about?
main plots don't, because the main plots are a lot bigger. And they really are not anything that happened in the ER. The vignettes and the characters in the ER, a lot of those are based on actual things that happen.
Okay. All right.
So when I talk about a patient a drunk patient who disappeared and then fell through the roof in front of us because he had climbed up into the ceiling to rip out wires, that happened one day.
It did. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I've only been in as a patient in ER, but depending on the hour, it can be quite entertaining if you're not that sick. So I
Yeah, I
can't
mean, if
imagine
you're in a
working there.
suburban ER, it's kind of, easy going. But if you're downtown in a trauma center, it's a gloves off. We have fights in the ER. There's violence in the ER. There's mental illness. There's drugs. There's alcohol. Those are all potent
Yeah.
mixtures of emotion.
Yeah. A couple of times I've been there and we've had criminals coming in, and the interactions between them and the hospital and then the police, and that all gets
Yes.
very complicated. So that's fun. Um, let's talk about Banshee. You said that you what he was, but how did they get together? So what's that situation?
Yeah, it was funny. In book one, the sidekick is a cop friend of Doc's. Doc has a cop friend, and he's a good character. He's kind of actually based on a friend of mine, but I wanted to make him more interesting, so I gave him a police dog. And then I started saying, well, Doc's going to watch the police dog. And then, like I said, there was an incident where there's a shootout, and Banshee takes a bullet and almost dies for Doc. And at the end of the book, because Banshee has been injured, he's no longer allowed to be a police dog and has to retire. And the cop is getting a new police dog, and basically gives Banshee over to Doc to take with him as a new home.
Wow. And
Yeah.
then they go on the road together.
Then they take it on the road.
Why won't Doc settle down?
Doc won't settle down because settling down would not be interesting. No, I think, listen, there's some of my personality in Doc. If you know me, you would recognize the pieces, but I'm married with 3 kids. I live in a home. I'm not going to chase down murderers. I'm not going to chase down terrorists. Doc is unencumbered, so he's allowed to move around the country and he's allowed to meet new people. And the new environment for each book and the new cast of characters for each book keeps it fresh. It's kind of a
Okay.
lot like the Reacher series. Jack Reacher can't settle down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if he settled down and got married, he couldn't do all the fun stuff he does. He goes to a town, he finds trouble, he solves it, he moves on. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. So you said that some of the scenes are things that you've seen. How accurate are the medical scenes?
So I try to keep the medical scenes very accurate. I make them accurate enough that people who are medical will appreciate them, and people who are not medical will still understand them. So I have to dumb it down a little from pure medical speak, because again, average person may not understand what's going on. But I really try to capture, what is it like to do CPR on a person? What is it like to try and resuscitate someone who got shot in the chest? Because that's really kind of the unique catch of my books that make them different from other thrillers.
Yeah. So there's a mystery, but then there's also the sort of, it's not house, but it's the ER kind of excitement going on.
Yeah, I mean, you'll learn a little bit about medicine. You'll learn, like I said, a little bit about the social issues, about the mental illness and the drug problems we see, the homelessness we see in the ER, and how that is handled. So it's a little bit of a social statement on the side without throwing it in people's faces.
Okay. So how has the series evolved and where is it headed?
Gotcha. So book one, Last Patient of the Night, was set in Houston. Um, Book two, which is Faulty Bloodline, is actually based in a rural Montana. It's a fake Montana town, but a rural Montana town, kind of a
Okay.
small Montana ranch town type thing. Think Yellowstone kind of setting, you know. Book 3 went from the quiet of Montana to Las Vegas. So Sin City Treachery is set in Las Vegas, and it's by far the biggest plot that I had of the books. And then book 4, Deadly Equation, they went off to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
So
Are these all places you've actually been?
yeah, except for the rural Montana. I had to just make that up, but it was made up anyway, so no one's been.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've been there. I do like, the Vegas is set during an F1 race weekend. I'm a big
Okay.
F1 fan, so I work the F1 race into it. There's a cool scene in Hoover Dam where they're down inside the dam and there's a little thing going on. So I do try to get a lot of the local environment. Same thing with Washington D.C.
Mhm.
That one's got a little bit of it turns out to be a little bit of almost a quest like the Da Vinci Code, where they're following
Ooh.
clues throughout the city and going different places to get to the solution. So they're fun to write, though.
Yeah. Well, readers love the book. Gregory D. Lee, author of Stringer, read book 1, and he wrote, Last Patient of the Night is MASH meets Detective Harry Bosch. It's a thriller that won't disappoint. Now that will get your attention right there. That's a pretty good, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, we use that one all the time. That's a great quote from Gregory, so I appreciate that from him.
So what is your writing process like?
Oh my God, chaotic. So like I say, I don't plot anything out. I was writing my book the other day, and it took a complete 180 turn and went a new direction. And I was excited because I was like, wow, I didn't know that was going to happen. I mean, it literally surprises me. Um, I don't write every day. I only write when I have something to write. So as I think about the next scene and where it's going, that might be tomorrow, that might be next week. It just, depends when it kind of pops into my head. I almost always write in the morning just because there's so many distractions throughout the day. Once the phones and emails start going off, it's hard to write. Um, but when I am ready to write, I typically, will write anywhere from 1 to 4,000 words, and try to push them out quickly.
Okay.
So
How do you capture those aha inspired moments when, say, you're driving, or do you use anything to capture things?
no, I should. A lot of it comes during quiet time. That some of my best ideas come in the middle of the night because I have insomnia, so I wake up. So I'll read for a little bit, and then to kind of calm my mind down, I think about the book. Okay, where's it going next? What's happening next? What should happen? Where do we need to? How do we get from here to here? So a lot of those best ideas come at night.
Okay. Yeah, I've started learning to use the record thing on my phone. I didn't know there was like a notepad thing, but it reads it back to you. So
Oh yeah,
that's kind
no,
of cool.
I should do that. There are definitely nights or mornings when I wake up and I'm like, I had a great idea last night. I have no idea what it is this morning. So.
I did that for years. I used to keep a notebook at my bedside, but in the morning it was gibberish because it was a sleep state idea and it's not real fleshed out. But I have learned that, and I see other authors doing this, using that note function. And here's a little, I don't usually interject myself, but this is funny. I have started using that because I don't record the people, but I love a turn of a phrase or some colloquial expression or something. And if you don't happen to have a pad and paper handy, there's no way you're going to get that. So I'll go ahead and grab it, say it, and then tell it to myself later. Any new projects on the horizon?
I'm really focused on this series. It's done extraordinarily well. It's actually the 1 year anniversary of book 1 tomorrow.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it's at about 4,000 ratings on Amazon, which is just phenomenal to me. I can't believe it's done that well. And the other books are selling through very well too. So, like I said, I finished book 5. I'm working on book 6. My wife is my editor, so she edits as I'm working on the next book. But I put them in a different state every time. My goal would be to have all 50 states covered eventually with 50 books. So
it gives you a good reason to travel too.
Yes, and I can write off all the travel too. It's a business expense.
There you go. Yeah, you'll have to get to Montana. I've been to Montana. How to pack for Montana? Let me tell you: take a bathing suit and also take a parka because it could be July and there could be a snowstorm. Who knows? So, Well, Gary, it's been an honor. I want to thank you for taking the time with us today. Listeners, if you do read the books, and I do recommend that, please make sure that you leave a like and a like review for Gary. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a couple of stars if that's all you can do. It's the like and subscribe of the book world. And on that note, please hit like and subscribe now if you aren't already subscribed to the channel so you'll never miss another episode of Writer to Writer, and so we can continue to bring you the authors you adore. Thank you, Gary, so much.
Hey, thank you very much.